I actually spent about 10 years of my time running a local exploration office here, in Thunder Bay as well as in Red Lake before I moved up to Vancouver to focus on a development project in Nunavut, which has a lot of synergies and remoteness to Northern Ontario. A lot of the same challenges, different challenges, but the same at the same time. And one of the opportunities I had several years ago was to come back and join a company named First Mining Gold that had a great project portfolio, in an area of familiarity for me, and it's gold projects in Northern Ontario, some exposure to Quebec, but largely Northern Ontario, some great districts around the Red Lake area. And we are a Canadian-based exploration and development company. Our key focus is the Springpole Gold Project, which is about 100 kilometers east-northeast of Red Lake, Ontario. And that project is currently our focus in the federal and provincial environmental assessment process. We're in about the 6th year of that process. We submitted our final environmental assessment in November of 24, just recently, and are currently going through the review period of that process. And our vision as a company is to be, what could be the next gold producing company in Ontario. We still have a few years away to go, and certainly a lot of collaboration and alignment in getting there. But we see the validation in history and some of the numbers given to us by Leanna in terms of the great foundation here in Ontario for gold mining. It's been an important part of this region for likely 100 years now. I think it's really important that there's probably 100 years of mining between Red Lake and Timmins and all the various operations in between that go back to that early 1920s period. So there's great validation in the success and opportunities of gold mining in Ontario. It's certainly been here for a long time and probably not going away from some of the other statistics of new mines coming on board. But First Mining wants to be a part of that story, and we want to be a part of the modern story. So we want to learn from all the history, I think, that's out there, and we want to learn from all the different people that want to participate in the future of gold mining in Ontario. And I think this conference has been a great facilitator of that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of interest in not only how to stay engaged, but to get engaged or grow with the industry. And so for us, as an oncoming potential producer for the future, it's certainly something that we're embracing and proud to be a part of here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. So just as your introduction, you actually are just in the process of taking over Musselwhite Mine. So I think that's important to know, I think, as to, what were the decisions behind why that happened?
Sure. So maybe I'll just give a little bit of background on Orla Mining. We're a fairly young company, only about 8 years old, but really the founders of the company are long-standing, mining industrialists. So the company was founded by Pierre Lassonde, who was the founder of Franco-Nevada, Canadian, and is very proud and very strong supporter of the Canadian mining industry. One of the second co-founders was Chuck Jeunesse, who is a former CEO of Goldcorp, and that will tie into the Musselwhite connection in the future. So they seeded the company with 2 assets. One was in Panama, one was in Mexico. And during the last 5 years, we permitted, built, and are now operating the mine in Mexico. So that was a very successful launch and startup for us, and it set us up for a position to continue to grow the company. We purchased our project in Nevada and are working through the permitting process there to bring it into construction and online. But we always wanted to come back to Canada. We have a lot of roots in Canada and Northern Ontario. I went to university in Sudbury. I've lived in Ignis, Manitouwadge, Kirkland Lake. I spent a lot of time not only in the Northwest, but in the North, working in the mine. So it's been very nice coming back to North Bay over the last 3 months as we've been working on the Musselwhite acquisition. The reason why we were so attracted to the Musselwhite operation, it's a combination of a few things. One, it starts with the geology. Musselwhite is in a district that has a fantastic geology, and within the Newmont portfolio, Newmont's a global giant, and unfortunately, Musselwhite was much lower in their portfolio than what it really represents as a gold operation, and we saw that as an opportunity. So with a reserve life of only 7 years, Newmont, and Newmont's one of our shareholders. We have a tremendous amount of respect for them, but they weren't looking at growing Musselwhite, and they wanted to transfer it into the hands of a company that would really invest in the operation, in the people, and in the stakeholders surrounding that community. So during our visits, we saw the gold potential that we think through exploration and additional investment in Musselwhite, we'll be able to grow that mine life, into an ongoing multi-decade operation. So that's the lens in which we're looking at the investment here. The second thing is the people. We saw the heart of the operation when we came to visit. We have ties back to Goldcorp, and a lot of the employees at Musselwhite remember the Goldcorp days. They know Chuck Jeunesse, our chairman of the board. We really felt that, being a Canadian company, returning the asset back into Canadian ownership, that we could really do some positive things. The next thing that we saw was the team at Musselwhite and the level of engagement that they had with all the stakeholders, from the Indigenous communities to the business communities locally. And that's something that we are fully supportive of and want to be a part of, and are looking forward to making those introductions so that we can meet all of those stakeholders and they can meet us and learn our values and look at how we can grow our values together. So that was the rationale for the transaction. We're still working on the actual close from a corporate point of view. Our shareholders have voted in favor of it, and we expect to close in the first quarter.
Excellent news. Yeah, thank you. Thank you both very much for the background. So a lot of people in the room here are suppliers, service suppliers to the gold, and they want to work with you. So I think one of the questions that they might have is, what can we do as providers to help you with what you do? So is there certain things that we can do to make it easier for you as companies, for suppliers to work with you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, for ourselves, we're really looking at, a future growth profile that'll be rather climatic. It'll go off really quickly. This project has been in positioning and study for a long period of time, and it'll continue with social license and permitting here for the next number of years. But, when we look to take off in the coming timeline, that's when things really, the rubber hits the road and things will get going pretty quickly. So from a supply perspective, it's really an awareness of where the opportunities are. And certainly Springpole is one that we want people to have, that awareness of. And certainly, as a northern operation, there's nothing better than working with people that know the North. So, we're looking to, the local business community, the local Indigenous communities, the municipalities to really help us. We have experience in the North. We're proud to be in the North, but we'd rather do that with the northern climate and individuals that know it best. So certainly our ability to attract skilled workers, procurement, businesses is something that we want to be out there actively achieving, and as part of attending seminars like this and conferences, and certainly I think in terms of promoting health with us and how to be ready. Certainly I think global supply chain is an important facet today. Timelines are important in mining. So, ensuring, that secure in supply, secure in capacity, and secure in, a trained workforce. And so, we will be working hard with, the local region here, on a workforce readiness strategy to support our project. And, one of the things that I find is really important is, ensuring that, we have healthy workers, ensuring we have healthy businesses. And for me, a lot of times that comes down to having, healthy communities and healthy families. And I think it's an important part of our business environment here is to really address that, we need to ensure that, not only are we strong on the economical end, but, we're strong on the fit for readiness end. And that includes, mental health and addiction, and attention to our workers' needs. And so there's an awareness front that, really we would look to not only the businesses, but partnering with each other on how to support that capacity of providing, skilled workforces and available businesses, to make sure that we're successful in our objectives.
Thank you.
So from our perspective, we're investing in an asset that has a multi-decade history. it has existing relationships with the suppliers and the workforce. So our approach is, and one of the themes that I've heard this morning is, the growing the capacity and the increased access of opportunities. So that's something that we will definitely have an ear for and want to look at how we can participate in increasing that capacity at Musselwhite. So this is a great platform for us. As an example, our mine in Mexico has a very similar economic development program running in that state, where there are very small businesses that are trying to access the mining operations, and they just didn't have whether it's the procedures or the mass or the knowledge of how to bid or how to get into the door. So between the state government of Zacatecas, the Economic Development Council, and the mining operations there, formed a working group to share what the requirements are of the operations and identify the gaps to those service providers, and work with the service providers and the government agencies to bring those companies to a level in which they can compete and can supply services and supplies to the mining operations. So, that is something that we're very familiar with, that we're one of the signatories to, and it sounds like it's, very much one of the initiatives that's going on here.
Thank you. That's all very exciting. So now I have some more statistics for you. All in line with what you've been saying. 31,000 jobs directly, 46,000 jobs associated with mineral processing and mining. 2/3 of Ontario direct mining jobs are in Northern Ontario. And in the last 5 years, 5 new operating mines, 4 mines expanding, currently 12 significant gold projects. So why do I say that? I say that because as a supplier to the mining industry, one of the challenges that we have is skilled workers. And when you start talking about more mines and more things happening and expansion, the question I have for you is, how are you going to address the work shortage of workers, and do you have plans to address those issues?
So yeah, I spoke a bit towards the skilled worker end and training and capacity driven. Certainly, it's something that's an important piece, and I think that's where the opportunity to really project and forecast the statistics of the region currently, and then identify the projects and needs that are up and coming. So speaking to gaps, I think we have to be very focused on understanding where the gaps are, and there may be some trades that are stronger than others, or trades that need to be uplifted. And I think the modernization of those trades too. I mean, there's a great deal of electrification, automation, technology, and innovation that's really at the forefront, I think, of what our future operations. So, we'll start to see a shift in that. But, we need businesses, we need workforces, and we need education capacity in terms of driving towards that shift. And I think, we will see it. I think we're seeing it in some of the current, mines that are coming online where there's autonomous vehicles and items, but they still take, skilled people behind that, whether it's for fixing them, whether that's driving them, whether that's writing codes and scripts that ensure that they're safely doing the activities that they're meant to be done. But what we need to do together is to identify those gaps and then work to the mitigation of how we can ensure that we've got a readily available supporting capacity to continue to grow and sustain what is I think a very prominent area for gold mining.
One of the, I would call it an opportunity that we have with the acquisition of Musselwhite, which might start off as counteractive to the job shortage, is with the acquisition, there's a lot of the work that's currently being done to support the mine being done in other parts of Canada and in the US. When we take over, those services will no longer be provided through Newmont. So we will be immediately looking to hire people to fill those jobs here in the Northwest. And recognize that that's going to be a challenge, but that just I think speaks to the initial conversations of the morning sessions of the economic development for the region. So those jobs will be located here. So we're relocating jobs from the U.S., from Southern Ontario, from Vancouver, not people, the job opportunities, and that's across all aspects. It's not just the trades. These are in HR, in technical positions, in finance. So not just the traditional mining jobs. All of those postings will be going up shortly as we close the deal. So speaking to the shortage, this shortage was created, back in the early 2000s when gold prices dropped and mining careers, fell out of favor. Our youth at the time weren't going into the mining sectors. There were no jobs there. They were leaving the communities, going into other sectors. And really, we've been trying to recover ever since. And there's been a lot of programs, a lot of companies, doing a lot of innovative things to increase the availability of the workforce. Musselwhite will be no different. I think that we need to be looking at all of the things that those companies are doing. I know that Musselwhite currently has training programs for underground, training programs for process as the entry-level opportunities to get unskilled workers trained to be able to work safely in the operations. And then working with the training centers and making sure that there's opportunities to make sure that they have the resources they need to train people to be able to come in and provide services into the workforce. And then another component is that we need to look at is employee retention, and why are some of the reasons why employees are leaving, and focusing on are the things that we can do to retain the employees that we have and not suffer higher levels of turnover.
That's very exciting to hear that there are going to be jobs located in this region and not elsewhere. So that's exciting news. Also, I think a lot of us struggle with that retention of employees and the skilled workers and that sort of thing. So maybe there's an opportunity there for us all to get together and maybe have those conversations around retention of employees in Northern Ontario and that sort of thing. I think that would probably be beneficial. So mining, statistics because I don't know it. Mining has become the largest private sector industrial employer on a proportional basis of Indigenous peoples in Canada. An average of 12% of the workers in Ontario's mining sector in 2023 were Indigenous workers. Indigenous economic reconciliation and the support of the return to Indigenous prosperity, as well as capacity building, are something that's really important for this region. What are some of the things that you've done or some of the things that you're hoping to do in your companies to address economic reconciliation or capacity building?
Yeah, so I think, certainly from a First Mining perspective, we strongly recognize, our operations existing on the traditional lands of the Indigenous people of the region. And I think that's kind of where it starts for First Most, is really respecting and, doing a lot of listening to understand. So it's not all about our perspective. It's also about, how and if First Nations and, Indigenous communities across Northern Ontario want to participate. And certainly, that's where reconciliation, I think, begins, is there's a long listening piece at the front end of that. I think there's a lot of understanding that has to go on about, the history, and certainly mining plays a big role in that. So we've got to learn a bit about our history and listen to the other side of the perspective as well. It's not just our side of the perspective as the mining company. I think we have a dynamic history. There certainly are a lot of successes and positive stories that we read about and hear about, but I think at the same time, if you really address the forefront of the mines and their history, there's a lot of things that we can do better and learn from. So that's a key piece, I think, at the front end of it, is really just, taking the time to listen and hear those different perspectives. And depending on region or community, those perspectives can change, right? Mining has been present largely all across Ontario on a gold platform, and again, dates back 100 years. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that's where you need to really start your journey in reconciliation, is listening. And I think from there, understanding, what are the priorities, or what are the opportunities that, many of the Indigenous around the region, want to be involved in. How do they want to participate? And certainly economics has been, one of the answers that's come around, and certainly a big focus in mining, of course. It has the ability to drive a lot of opportunity and change. And certainly I think capacity is the other piece, is that, I think there's a real shift coming where we can see things transition from a purely not just economic context, but I think, a really important one that people need to consider is sort of an environmental stewardship, a responsible approach to mining. And I think that's where our image, and awareness needs to change as well. So those are things that we're interested in. Certainly how to drive a modern perspective on employment and training, business opportunities and procurement, and furthermore, benefit sharing. So certainly working towards benefit sharing with the communities. But furthermore, again, I think the environmental stewardship, social responsibility are key aspects of reconciliation. And I think it's a path. I think, we need to not only challenge ourselves, but, challenge the community, challenge the mining companies too. And to, how do we continue to advance this? It's not, one token agreement. It's a path that we need to continue to pursue. And I think we're starting on that path, and it's going to take a lot of time. But, I think there's conversations that, need to continually re-engage along the way. So, we're working towards, learning about, the history of the region, the ways in which Indigenous populations want to participate, and if they want to participate in our project opportunities, and then really having that key dialogue on how do we work together and collaborate. So it's not a linear fashion, but I think that's why those conversations need to continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been in the mining industry over 30 years, and I've seen what I would call is an improvement in Indigenous engagement and participation throughout that time, and that by no means says that we're finished. It just, my observation is it continues to evolve, and want to see it continue to evolve in a positive fashion. I know in this room there's people that worked on the original Musselwhite IBA, which was one of the groundbreaking, first of its kind IBAs at its time. I was fortunate enough in my career to be part of a team that negotiated 2 IBAs with First Nations, and it was a tremendous learning experience for myself, and something that I continue to learn from. And the largest thing that I learned during that experience was the power of listening and the conversations, and that there is no one solution, and really it's a matter of being open to what are the needs and the aspirations of the communities in which you're working with, and looking for the opportunities and where there could be assistance to further those companies or individuals that are looking to grow the business. A small example, one of the mines that we were building in Saskatchewan, Ontario, we had a First Nation business owner, and he had bid on a very earthworks contract, a sole proprietor company, and he came out of the logging industry. We had a presentation around the logging industry, and he wanted to get into mining. And we said, we're going to award you this contract. And he came back to me about 2 weeks later. He said, Andrew, can I get a letter from you to say that I have this contract and what the contract value is worth? I said, Richard, why? He says, the leasing company for the trucks won't lease me the trucks unless I have this. I said, absolutely, I'll write that letter for you. So, with that letter, he's able to secure the equipment, and he's still a contractor on that site 12 years later, and has only grown his business. So, just a small example of, little things that can be done that have a huge impact on those types of business opportunities. But it's just a matter of having the ear and having the willingness to say what's needed and how can we help.
Thank you. I know that just being in business 30 years in Thunder Bay, I've seen a transition from there being no participation with, or very little, I shouldn't say no, but very little participation with the Indigenous community. And I know we have a long way to go, but I'm really happy to say that it's happening, and that it's a good thing that it's happening. So it's nice to see that the mines are finding creative ways, because I know that a lot of times the big businesses, I think my mind, I see a mine, they're big business, right? And they always want these procurements that are big and overbearing and overwhelming, and you can't participate, and automatically you're out, right? Because there's no way you can do it. So it's nice to see that they're finding ways to allow the small businesses to be able to participate in those types of things. So very exciting to see that happening. On that note as well, the mines are the big guys, right? So as communities, we expect the mines to help us, because they're the ones that can help us and find creative ways to help us. Whether it's through, because a small community has limited resources, limited people, you know the person in the community because they do everything, right? So it's just finding ways to be creative to help us in our community. So are there some ways that you have, just some examples, I guess, of ways that you've found to assist communities in whatever it is that they've asked you for?
Yeah, so I'll speak to our experiences here over the last number of years, and some things I can speak to is we have obviously resources in terms of our ownership of projects. We certainly have economic opportunities in terms of how and where we spend our dollars, and so I mean obviously having the community side and local municipality or indigenous communities an awareness of making us aware of their needs of their communities. Again, we talked a bit about healthy communities, healthy families, etc. So I mean they do vary by priority, but certainly there's a lot to give back. It's not all economic either. I think sometimes you want to see people in the seats and up front where you can interact with them, and this is that opportunity. So from our part, we do certainly spread around a lot of our resources in terms of sponsorships, in terms of committee representation, infrastructure representation on certain planning commissions and other things that we can get involved with. And then the other one I've noted, especially very prominent around the north, land ownership often is a barrier to some municipalities and some regions. I know certainly mining centers, a lot of us mine owners, we own a lot of the lands. It makes it challenging for development and expansion of communities. And, we've worked very closely with some of the communities in some of our project areas to understand, what future plans look like so that we can appropriately plan for community growth, community capacity support, for our mining operations, and, ensure that, there's a continued dialogue on how to coexist and collaborate together for success, because it's not just about obviously taking something out of the ground. It's about how you get the most value of that to everybody who's supporting that operation. And I think that's a bit of a different vision than yesteryear, but mining is that opportunity that probably provides one of the greatest economic givebacks or kind of drivers in terms of parcel of land or size of land. So there's a lot that can really come back. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. So understanding that we discuss, what those priorities are for the community, whether it's healthcare and health centers, whether it's seniors complexes, whether it's youth initiatives. I mean, these are all things that we are a part of and happy to get involved in all of our project areas.
Excellent.
I think one of the things that everyone in the room recognizes is that mines do have a finite life. It's a resource that is extracted, but I think it's the responsibility of the operator and the shareholders is to recognize that it creates an opportunity during the operation to create something greater than what was there during that operation. So in the context of communities, what can be done that will continue after the life the life of the mine is completed. And that goes as well as the businesses. The opportunity of the mine is that a business can maybe start and be, the mine is 90% of its business. But at the end of the mine life, maybe that mine is only 10% of that company's business. So that when the mine closes, that business can still continue on. Similar things for the communities. If the communities are only, getting a financial support from the mine, after the mine is gone, that will be gone. So what we need to do is create the infrastructure, the things that are of value to the communities that will continue past the operation of the mine, because they are finite, they will end. So that's the key, in my opinion. And I think that it's the responsibility of the mine operators to listen, because no community's needs are the same. We have several communities in around the mine in Mexico. One is a community of very basically retired community. They're not interested in jobs. They're not interested in economic development. They're not of a working age. They've got social security concerns. They've got healthcare concerns. Access to healthcare. So we need to listen to that community and say, how can we facilitate that for your community, where another one does have a workforce that wants to be engaged and wants the business opportunities. So how do we engage and look to grow those opportunities, always with the lens of, how can this be sustainable after the mine? That has to be in everyone's business model or personal development or community plan. That has to be there from the start. And then the other opportunity that I've done in several operations that I think is huge leverage is whether they're private and public partnerships. So there's a lot of programs, and there's probably a lot of people in the room that are aware of programs that companies are not accessible to companies. Whether they're communities or for small businesses that we don't have access to. But the small business or the communities have access to it, whether it's a government program, but then they just need a little bit of seed money, or they need a study done, or they need a business plan, but they have no idea how to start that. So if we pool our expertise and provide the support there, that grants them access to extra funding or support, which then another company can be involved, whether it's related to the mining sector or not. Still participating to grow business opportunities and leverage these grants and programs that are out there that quite honestly we might not be aware of, but we rely on the economic communities and the communities themselves, or I should say the economic corporations, to say, hey, the government's rolled out this program, you can be eligible for it. What do you need? And even though it might not be a mining center type opportunity, that's something that we'd be open to say we can support. And it's not necessarily only in dollars, but in like business planning or those types of expertise. So in summary, we're open to all ideas and having that dialogue. And I think Orla as a new company entering into this jurisdiction, I just want to leave you with a message that we're here to listen. We're looking forward to meeting everyone and engaging and growing together.
Thank you. It's really nice to hear that you do all kinds of things within the community. And so, quick question, you're from Northern Ontario, born and raised?
New Brunswick, born and raised in New Brunswick, went to school in Ontario.
Ontario.
Sure, yeah.
So got adopted by Northern Ontario. You're from Northern Ontario? Born and raised?
I was born in Winnipeg and spent the majority of my life in Northern Ontario.
Okay, so adopted into Northern Ontario. So what I hear though, and I guess it's the reason I asked the question is because I hear your passion, and I hear that you're passionate about the communities that you're working in and that you're living in, and so that's exciting because I think all of us that are here are passionate about Northern Ontario and the communities that we live and work in, and so I have a couple of questions. So my first question for you, James, is how did you get so involved in health and safety? Where was that passion from?
Yeah, I think a lot of that passion is just from being at the operational side of working with teams and, being from all aspects of, just a co-collaborator in a team to becoming a leader in teams. And I think, when you truly value people and, that's everybody you work with and everybody that's around a project. I mean, the one thing to me that really rings home is, we always strive and want and desire, our goal is to send everyone home safe every day. And, I take the perspective of, everyone should come to work or go home from work the way they came home from work, and if not better. And I think that's kind of the mindset that I've taken on and really wanted to champion is that, everyone should return home safe and if not better than the way they came to work. And I think that's certainly in the health and safety aspect, and I've talked a bit too about the mental health as well. I think that certainly fits in the health part of health and safety, and it's something that I think is a growing commitment from all employers is, we need to really care about our people. And, Andrew spoke about retention and some of the other challenges, and they come together. I mean, your workers are most productive when they can continue and ready and are passionate about coming to work for you. So I've been fortunate to work for a number of great mentors in my career and path, and it takes leaders in this business to stand up and really want to do the right things. And sometimes that means a commitment of extra resources or extra time that might take away from a moment in time in the business. But I think the return end to the business, when you've got a healthy and happy and safe workforce, I think I've just seen that productivity and success and objectives is so much easier obtained.
Excellent, thank you. I too have the same passion, so I was happy to see that. So Alamos is now going to, or soon will take over Musselwhite. Or Orla, sorry. Sorry. Orla, well, hopefully not Alamos. That wouldn't be good. Sorry about that. So one of the things that happens to people who work in a workplace is they're very comfortable doing what they do. So one of the things when another company comes in and buys that company, people are a little bit worried. And so what is it that Orla is going to do or is hoping to do to reassure people that it's going to be okay?
So we've already started some of those communications on the announcement and and subsequent visits to the site. And the first message that we were sending across to the Musselwhite team, on announcement is that, we are not looking at cutting any operations. We're not looking at trying to squeeze dollars out by any layoffs. We want to invest. We want to grow the team. And right now, we're not only working on completing the close, but we're already starting our plans on what our investments will be in exploration, in increased manpower. I mentioned, earlier, those job creations. So hopefully the message is being heard that, we're here to invest, in the operation, invest in the people, invest in the stakeholders, and in the business communities. That's our vision, and that's the lens that we're looking at it. And with that commitment, it will be a failure if we do that and anyone gets injured. So speaking on James's points, that is the first in any of our discussions, is that anything that we undertake cannot injure someone, and that's full stop from the core value of our organization. So those are the messagings that we're giving the workers, and we look to back up those words with our actions when we close on the deal.
Wonderful. That's excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us today. I think that it's an exciting time for gold, and we look forward to seeing what's next. And I think we're going to open the floor now to some questions. Go, Jason.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, and your commitment to Northern Ontario. So in regards, I'll step back. I own a few different businesses here in the region. Very proud to say that majority of my staff, for each of my business, are majority Indigenous employees. So we live it, we breathe it, we walk it on a daily basis. And again, those who know me know I speak very honestly and very truthfully in regards to sharing some of our challenges. And as much as we talk about reconciliation and building capacity, we still face many barriers as Indigenous businesses. As much as we talk about building capacity and opportunities, there are many that are threatened by the fact that we are building that capacity and those opportunities as Indigenous businesses. So when it comes to evaluating RFQs and as we respond to RFQs, we are still challenged with suppliers, manufacturers not allowing us access to fair pricing. So we're not comparing apples to apples, it's apples to oranges oftentimes, where our pricing from suppliers is not what some of the bigger players may have access to. From the service perspective, having an engineering team, a team of technicians, unfortunately, at times we are still sitting on the outside looking in. Even though many industries will sit there and talk about reconciliation, we're sitting on the bench with our helmet on, our skates tied, but nobody's tapping us in the game. What the challenges we're facing here is in regards to looking at opportunities from a value add, not simply best price. Trust me, at the end of the day, we want to be just as competitive as everybody else. But oftentimes there are many factors that stand in that way. And what we need from you is the opportunity to have a conversation, to understand why and what our challenges are. Simply saying, no, you didn't qualify for a project because your price was too high. Having a conversation and access to your buyers to help them understand why, right? Because the reality of it is, and this is just my opinion, that in order to encourage more participation in whatever sector from Indigenous people and Indigenous youth, they need to see more people that look like them. in those roles. Growing up on the res, I grew up in Lake Helen Reserve, very proud to say that I'm a proud member of the Red Rock Indian Band. We never had engineers on our reserve. We own Warrior Engineering now. And that, for me, is a catalyst to future growth and opportunity and building capacity. We're giving these kids something to shoot for, right? And like I said, we walk it and talk it every day. So my question to you is there a commitment to ensuring that we're going to get a fair shot? And even though we're still small, we're growing, like my colleague Jason Razovich said earlier, and friend, that we got a late start to this game. We're trying to catch up. But we're going to need a hand up, not a hand out. I want a hand up. To sit there and go, you know what, who's doing right by the Indigenous people and your commitment as Orla and First Mining Gold to reconciliation. The work of reconciliation takes courage, a lot of courage. You're going to get crapped on. We hear it on a daily basis that, oh, you're making compromises for Indigenous inclusion. Well, sure, yeah. You have to. We've been excluded for a long time, right? But we want to work with you. When you talk about building capacity after life of mine, we want to be there. We want to help work with communities and help them. Those of us who have experience and knowledge, we want to help those communities. That's my commitment. I don't need an RFQ that sits there and says you have to work with whatever First Nation to be inclusive. My business and what I do, that's a part of who we are. I don't need an RFQ to do that. I'm going to do that. Right? But what we need is we need that commitment, we need that courage to stand outside the box and sit there and go, no, we're going to do things differently. Right? Because what has happened in the past hasn't served us well. Maybe much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for your comments. Earlier, my comments, I shared some of my experience about how I've seen things evolve over the last 30 years. And I continue to expect them to continue to evolve. We're not there yet. I will not, sit here and say, my past experiences has made me an expert. If anything, it's humbled me. I learned a lot in those conversations. Put my foot in my mouth a few times, pretty badly. Unintentionally. Out of my own ignorance. That's my starting point. That I'm still here to learn, and I'm absolutely open to work with you on and any of the companies here as to how can we elevate, how can we remove the barriers or the stereotypes that are working against your businesses. That's how we're all going to be successful. So, like I said, we're coming here as Orla, with our values that I think are aligned with the values that are in the room. We're coming with an open ear. We're coming knowing we have a lot to learn. We do come with our experiences, and we do hope that those experiences will be a positive platform to go forward. But we're not coming with them and saying, this is what worked last time. It's just really, this is what made us who we are in front of you today. And I think, what I see in the room is great potential for growth and opportunity for everybody. So I hope that's answered your question. When we close and we have our team with Musselwhite, like I said, there'll be more engagement at all levels.
Yeah, thank you for your question, and certainly commend the courage and passion in the statement as well. And one of the things I'd like to say is that's what we need. We need people to challenge us. I mean, we need people to challenge the companies that are out there, managing and building these projects, and we need to hear how people want to participate. And I think about when I think that you're talking about RFQs and RFPs, and I think of values, and it's not just value on the price side. It's values across the spectrum of that evaluation. And the other thing that I've always put forward in the groups we work with at First Mining is that we want to work with the people that want to work with us. So your message is strong with us that if you want to be there and you want to support our project, that's probably first and foremost to us. Is that I've always found success in relationships, especially in people that want to work together. So certainly I think that's something that the business community can take away, is that, want to be there and let people know that you want to be that partner working together. And certainly on the Indigenous side, I mean, for ours, the First Nation communities surrounding our development opportunity, I mean, they are the closest provider, employer, to our project site. Their communities are first and foremost, and they're at the front of the line because they are the closest. And, that's an important value for us is, we could fly people from all over or fly goods and supplies from everywhere. But, ideally, the closer and more intimate we can get and be supported as truly, potential partners, I mean, that's where we would look to go. And so we need that challenge. We need to know who wants to work with us. But, certainly in our evaluations, we are very open to a platform of innovation even. If there's a scope of work that maybe doesn't fit your scale, maybe doesn't fit your abilities, as a newer opportunity in the future, to grow with us is kind of the other opportunity, is that, maybe there is something that does fit. And maybe in our dialogue or in the proposal, we need to talk about, how does this grow and how does this, incubate something, that can have something more lasting, as Andrew's spoken to.
Thank you. I like what you said, grow with us. So.
Just a follow-up question on that too. You mentioned the Musselwhite agreement and the evolution of agreements now. Are you actively looking at opportunities to consider amendments to procurement related to, well, if there are set-asides there that are part of the original agreement with some of the signatory communities, but if there are new ways to open up the procurement policy for Indigenous ownership and the criteria for open bidding, or if there's ways to consider the requirements of Indigenous participation for non-Indigenous businesses to be able to operate in the supply chain. I see that as part of socioeconomic reporting. And when you think along the value chain, earlier in the forestry presentation, I mentioned the Canadian Sustainability Standards. The ABPA, we've advocated to them along the value chain for better reporting about this. And we're going at the regulators now with the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission, and the CSA, Canadian Securities Administrators, to consider stronger opportunities from a regulatory perspective for monitoring the procurement. So I just wanted to know if you're up on that, if you're waiting for it to be regulated first, to be proactive on that voluntary period for corporate reporting, and whether internally your procurement people are thinking of growing the opportunities outside the set-asides with the signatory community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have I guess you should say, I'm not fully informed on those new policies or guidelines that are pending and where they'll eventually get rolled out. What I can speak to is, Newmont currently has the procurement policies in place. We will always continue to review policies that we're rolling out and how if there's barriers within them for individuals or companies, Indigenous companies or otherwise, we're open to amend those policies. So again, this ties into we're open to hear what's not working, and we're open to a dialogue as to what can be done.
Thank you. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you both for being willing to be put on the hot seat. I didn't fall off this tall seat, so I'm happy about that. But yes, thank you very much for your words of wisdom and representing the